Here's our forward-looking statement. I'd like you all to commit this to memory. There'll be a test on this in the morning. All right, we take a three-pronged approach to our business. Most of you may recognize us as previously being known as Eurasian Minerals, which is a prospect generator, and that is a business model that we still execute today. And we use the prospect generation business model to grow our royalty portfolio largely organically. So we were first publicly traded in December of 2004, and in that intervening 14 years, we've been building a minerals royalty portfolio. So every time that we sold off a property to a partner, we always held back a royalty. So now we've gotten to the point where our portfolio has matured to the degree that we have a number of properties in the development phase, in the pre-production phase, and in some cases in the production phase. So we've always been a royalty company, and as a consequence of that, now that things have matured more and we have cash flow coming in from production royalties along with other cash flows, we elected to change our name to more clearly reflect our current business activities, and we changed it to EMX Royalty in August. We also engage in royalty acquisitions when we can find those at favorable pricing levels, although that is becoming increasingly more difficult to do, but we have had some great success at that in the past. And then also, we engage in strategic investments when we find a company or an asset within a company that we think is gone largely unrecognized by the markets, and we'll get into that in a slide here in just a minute or two. These are our areas of interest around the world. We are truly an international company. Our biggest areas of interest are in the western United States, in Nevada, where we're primarily looking for gold. Also Arizona, we're heavily involved in Arizona, where we're looking for big copper, and there's certainly lots of big copper in Arizona. A lot of you may know us from when we were very active in Haiti. We have since sold those assets off to Newmont, who controls those now, and we hold a royalty on those. Also in Serbia, most people don't know this, but remember when Reservoir Minerals made that big discovery in Serbia, we actually sold the founding properties to Reservoir Capital, which morphed into Reservoir Minerals later. And so we were the first people to actually go into Serbia after the Balkan Wars simmered down, and we engaged in a little bit of what we refer to as political arbitrage, where the perceived risk in Serbia was up here, but through our political due diligence, we determined that the actual risk was down here. And in that political arbitrage, there was a lot of opportunity in that nobody was in there. And so with no competition, we were able to put together a very handsome land package, which we later sold off to Reservoir, and they consequently made that huge discovery. Now, we didn't originally have a royalty on their big discovery, but we were able to find one while they were fleshing out that big discovery, which now Nevsun owns, and we'll take a little bit closer look at that here in just a minute. We're also very active in Scandinavia. If you take a look at the Fraser Institute's survey of mining, the Scandinavian countries, specifically Sweden and Norway, always rate in the top three year after year after year. They're very favorable and very prospective jurisdictions for mining, and also we're very engaged in Turkey too. Which has a long, long history of mining. I've been to sites there where there was artisanal mining that went back to the time of Christ. Geographically, our largest number of acreage is in the U.S., followed by Sweden, Turkey, Haiti, and so on. Then commodities. Traditionally, our focus has been on the discovery of copper and gold, but we're also engaged in base metals and some platinum group element opportunities and such. And then our asset classes, we have about half of our properties classified as royalty assets, in that they're in the hands of our partners and they're advancing those, and we hold a royalty on those. And then we have a large portfolio of projects available for other companies to purchase from us, and then we would just maintain a royalty on that. This is our list of partners around the world. I think you can tell an awful lot about the company by our partners out there: Newmont, Rio Tinto, Anglo American, Ely Gold, Arizona Mining, Freeport McMoran, Antofagasta. You can see that's a lot. Our top shareholders are Paul Stevens out of San Francisco. He's a very, very wealthy fund manager. He ran a very successful group of retail mutual funds back in the 70s, which he consequently sold out of many years ago. But he is our single biggest shareholder in a lot of those shares. He owns in his own personal accounts, his wife's retirement accounts, his retirement accounts, his sons, his grandchildren's, and things like that. Sprott Global owns a lot of our shares, and a lot of Rick Rule's clients hold them in their accounts, along with Adrian Day, who is on here, because those are held in client accounts. That's probably accounts for about 3% of the shares. EMX employees and directors and such own about 8.5%. Newmont owns almost 6% of us. Mason Hill, which is a big fund group out of New York, largely hedge funds, owns a good piece of us, as well as Antofagasta, which is based in Santiago, Chile, and is a large copper producer. And you can see we have a nice share structure with about 80 million shares outstanding and about 87 fully diluted. Our largest royalty holding is on the Leeville royalty, and this is in Nevada. It's on the Carlin Trend, and this encompasses a number of Newmont mines, including portions of the turf in the Leeville mines, which is where most of the cash flow is emanating from right now. Since we purchased this royalty in 2012, it's provided us with almost $11 million in cash. And also, Newmont spent $1/3 billion US to put in the Turf 3 vent shaft, which came to full capacity utilization in November of 2015. And that vent shaft does nothing but pull air out of the ground. There's no ore skip on the bottom. There's no man cage on it, nothing. All it does is pull air out of the ground, and that provides ventilation for the turf in the Leeville mines. So you can imagine that if Newmont spent $1/3 billion to build a vent shaft, they've identified an awful lot of additional mineralization, and I suspect we'll be realizing cash flow from this asset long after I'm off this earth. Moving on to Turkey. We've been in Turkey for a long time, about 15 years actually. We have a cash-flowing royalty there called Balya over there in the western part of the country. That's a lead, zinc, silver asset. We're realizing modest cash flow out of there right now, $14,000 a month. We expect that to ramp up in the future. Then the Akarja property, which is a gold-silver system that we discovered back in 2007. And Susorta, off in sort of the western part of that map there. Both those are in the development phase right now, and I think those will end up being handsome cash-producing assets for us in the future. That's the Balya mine right there. That's it. And I'll just say one thing about this, actually, too. We have a 4% NSR on that. That's non-buyable, and it's uncapped. And also, we bought 1/2 of this mining district through government auction in Turkey back in 2006 for the equivalent of about $17,000. I think that's what you refer to as good value. So this has been very good to us, and I think it's going to be very good to us and our shareholders in the future. Scandinavia, we've been in there for a while now, and during the 5-year or so downturn that we're coming out of now, a lot of properties are dropped, and a lot of those properties we had our keen eyes fixed on, so when those were dropped, we were able to pick those up. And we've assembled quite a portfolio of properties there, and we have vended out a number of those, including some to Boreal Minerals, which had a very handsome press release that came out on Friday. That's a VMS system, and that's a lead, zinc, silver system, and they've been coming up with some very strong drill results there. And Boreal is a new company that was founded early last year. We provided them with 4 of the properties. We own 19.9% of their shares, and we have a 3% NSR on all of the properties. And they've been doing a very commendable job at advancing those properties, and they have an ongoing drill project right now. Serbian royalties, getting back to what I alluded to on one of the early slides. The big discovery that was made there at Kukurupeki or Timok, on the big discovery property, we never had a royalty on that. But because of our geologic intel in the area, we understood the potential for that property. And our CEO, Dave Cole, was able to ferret out a royalty on that property from an AIM-listed company that he bought. It's a 0.5% royalty, but on a massive copper gold deposit, 0.5% can be a very material amount. And Dave was able to buy that for $200,000 Canadian a few years ago. And then as that discovery was later fleshed out to the degree it is now, it became very obvious that that's going to be a very valuable asset for us in the future. Nevsun is currently saying that they plan to commence production in 2021, and I think this thing is going to end up being a very handsome ATM for us and our shareholders. Moving on to Melmish. This is in Far East Russia. This is one of the largest ongoing copper gold discoveries in the world. It is truly a massive discovery. It's a property that's about 16 kilometers long, about 5 kilometers wide. There's been 14 copper gold porphyry systems identified on the property thus far. There's an ongoing drill project on there right now. You can see some of those intercepts right there. Some people get a little tense when you start talking about Russia, but I assure you the perception of Russia and the realities there are substantially different. I won't go into all the details now, but you're free to stop by the booth after this and talk to me about it. I think you'd find it very enlightening how amenable Russia is to actually work in. It's a very friendly jurisdiction to work in. And the thing that really makes this project work is its proximity to infrastructure. So this project is situated right on the Amur River, which is one of the major rivers of Russia. It actually defines the Chinese-Russian border for, geez, I don't know, 2,000 kilometers or something, and then spills out into the Sea of Okhotsk at a deep water port large enough to accommodate Panamax ships. And that is on one side of the property, and they could actually barge the cons right from the property right out to the Sea of Okhotsk, or run it up the other side back into China, back up the river. And then on the other side of the property is a paved federal highway, a high voltage power line corridor, and a natural gas pipeline. And then there's rail access within about 40 kilometers. And then on the other side of the river, about 15 kilometers away as the crow flies or so, there's a brand new smelter built by Polymetal, a big Russian company, and they're amenable to toll milling. So everything is right there. Nobody lives on the property. It's been logged several times, so there's no environmental issues there in terms of wilderness designation or endangered species or anything like that. So it's really ideal, and it rarely happens like this. But this is a very fortunate opportunity. And what we want to do there is monetize this asset. To explain the ownership on this, this is owned 49% by Freeport-McMoRan, 51% by IG Copper, which is a company run by an American guy named Tom Bowens. There's no underlying Russian ownership there. The land tenure there is very clear. This was never explored during the Soviet era or anything like that. Freeport-McMoRan actually discovered this initially. So what we want to do is monetize this, and there's a lot of interested parties in this. All right, that's our cash burn rate. I know I've got to move along here. So these are a lot of drivers that I've gone over here. There's a lot of opportunity in the company, and I think 2018 is going to prove to be a very good year for EMX shareholders. Thank you so much.